What's up, y'all? I got asked to rank sorcerers in terms of their importance in the Sukuna fight. So let's get into it and some other viewer questions, but manga spoilers beware. Alright, so this first question of ranking the sorcerers comes to us from Anonymous, and honestly, my list is very similar to yours. First up, we have Gojo, of course, without whom none of this would be possible, right? They would have stood no chance against Sukuna if Gojo had not had weakened him and depowered him as he did. So, number one by a large margin. Number two, I am also putting Yuji. This is our MC after all, and at this point, he probably isn't number two in terms of strength, but he's probably going to get there, and they need him for his soul punching ability, because at the end of the day, they do want to defeat Sukuna, but the priority is to save Megami, which Yuji is quintessential for. So he is number two. I agree with you there. Number three, this is tough, but I'm actually going to put Yuta and Maki in that third slot, slightly above Ui Ui, but I am putting him fourth. And I do that because Yuta and Maki are like the heavy hitters after Gojo. Again, Yuji's climbing up those ranks, but we needed both Yuta and Maki to really pressure Sukuna and get him where we needed him to be. Now, Ui Ui is next because his importance cannot be understated. This man is the MVP in a number of ways, teleporting people out, providing the option for the training that even let them get this strong via the soul swap. So, I mean, honestly, you could make an argument that he's number two, but I'm going to put him at number four for now. The kid is a young prodigy, right? Now, after that, I've got Higuruma and Kusakabe tied. Now, Higuruma, because he's responsible for getting rid of Kamutoke, right? I hope I'm saying that right. But Sukuna's weapon. And that's no small feat, right? That's big. Also, the man was a prodigy, second to only Gojo in that regard, and he really showed out. So I think he was vital to this, again, in the same way Gojo removed a lot from Sukuna's arsenal, Higuruma did as well. And I'm putting Kusakabe also in that spot because I think they would be kind of screwed without Kusakabe's brains. I think he was a large part of putting this plan together. And without him, even though, he's not the heaviest hitter in terms of brawn, I think his brain would be severely missed if you just removed him from the equation. So I'm putting him on that Higuruma level. After that, I've got Kashimo, which, I know we've got some diehard Kashimo stands in this community that are going to be upset by this, but he really didn't do that much. He enabled Sukuna to transform into his true Heian era form, and that's about it. And honestly, Sukuna was going to transform pretty much no matter what. His entire body was beaten up after that hollow purple from Gojo. So really, you insert Maki, you insert Yuta Okotsu, hell, even Higuruma, Yuji, I think that transformation is coming pretty quick regardless. Now, Kashimo is strong. I'm not trying to take away from that, but just in terms of importance in this fight, that's basically all he accomplished, and Sukuna, just kind of batted it away like a fly. So I do think other characters could have gotten that transformation, and so for that reason, I don't think he's that important to the fight. After that, I have everybody else basically in a tie. So we're talking Miguel, Ino, Choso, LaRue, and even Miwa, who, saved Maki in the recent chapter. So not nothing, but I would kind of just group all of them together. They all have their role. It's mostly as kind of a distraction or to buy time. Yeah, and I think that's everybody. I might have left somebody out, but those were the main hitters at least. Next up, we got several questions from JoJo here, so let's just handle these one by one. This first one is, why don't people see Base Kashimo, Jackpot Akari, and Yuta Okotsu as relative in overall strength? I see that Yuta has gained more abilities, but people act like he's outgrown the other two by miles and miles. So I would say that most people, I think, do view those three as kind of relative as you're going to get, right? I honestly think that maybe your perception is slightly skewed because I know you're always in the trenches talking about those things with people. So I would say that, when we get deep into the agenda, deep into the power scaling, of course, people are going to have their opinions, but I would guess that most of the JJK fandom would say those people are equal. If anything, people may favor Yuta Okotsu because it's what have you done for me lately, right? We've recently seen some really impressive feats from him going up against Sukuna, seeing his domain expansion for the first time. I think that's probably the only reason that some people would consider him, a league above those two. But we're going to have to wait and see what Hikari shows us. because I'm assuming we're going to get some Hikari action here soon. And then, we're talking about base Kashimo. So I think that's, if he's not even using his curse technique, kind of the best he can hope for is being with those two in their pre-time skip evolutions. So again, I think this is pretty much true, and I would think most people would agree with that. Now, going on to your second question here, who are the physically strongest characters in JJK? Well, this really depends on exactly what you're asking here. Like, are you talking like who can lift the most in the gym, or are we talking about like with cursed energy reinforcement? I'm assuming the latter. So, off the top of my head, Gojo, Sukuna, those are, pretty much always at the top of every list. And if we're going to round this out into a top five, I would say Yuki for sure. Probably Miguel after what we saw from him recently. And for the last one, maybe Jackpot Hikari. And then your next question here is Yorozu versus Yuki. And I talked about this recently. It might have been like a month ago or so at this point. I couldn't find the video where I talked about this. I didn't talk about it at length, but in my opinion, it would be Yuki. Yorozu is no slouch, but Yuki just has so much in her arsenal that I think matches up really well against Yorozu. And if we're going to an ultimate kind of trump card v trump card, the black hole trumps the perfect sphere in my opinion. So I think it would be a high diff fight, but Yuki would win. Next, we got, could Kashimo's electromagnetic blast bypass infinity? And no, I don't think so. I think, I don't want to get like too in the weeds on this, but I know some people talk about like things moving a certain speed would be able to bypass it, or, like light particles, yada, yada, yada. I don't think that's true. Yes, light gets through infinity because, Gojo gets oxygen and sunlight and all those things, but it's because he's allowing those things to pass. Just because an attack maybe would share some similar properties with light or oxygen or any number of things that Gojo lets through doesn't mean they would let through. I believe Gojo's infinity works as like a whitelist. He intentionally selects things he's going to let pass through, and so he wouldn't let Kashimo's attack go through. So I don't think so. Now, for how many characters can survive his discharge? Pause. I don't know. I guess like basically anybody that can do RCT, I would say, can survive it. We can get specific here and say like, is he hitting them directly in the dome with it, like headshot? Then like maybe they wouldn't come back with RCT. But generally, I would say anybody that has RCT could survive it. Next, we got how strong would a Rika Uzumaki be? Really strong. I don't really know how to quantify this, but probably the strongest possible Uzumaki from a singular curse, unless we want to count the merger, should that happen. But yeah, supremely powerful. And then finally, create a curse technique for Kusakabe. Man, this is tough. I would want it to be something that could showcase his intellect, right? So it would be cool if there was some sort of like chess curse technique, maybe like kind of similar to projection sorcery, but instead of plotting your own movements, it's based on predicting what your enemy's going to do. So if Kusakabe is smart enough to realize like what his opponent is about to do, he can use that against them or something like that. And speaking of Kusakabe, we got this question from Rust, who wanted to know if Kusakabe had spent enough time inside of Yuji's body, could he have gained Sukuna's curse technique? So I would say, hypothetically, that idea, yes, but it wouldn't have worked that way in the situation we saw, because the soul swap is not really the same thing as, Sukuna's finger being ingested by Yuji. Because one, Sukuna wasn't in Yuji anymore, nor had Yuji awakened the Shrine Curse technique. But even if he had, the way the soul swap works is Kusakabe would be in Yuji's body, but Kusakabe's body wouldn't have access to that shrine, right? The same way that, let's just say hypothetically that Yuta and Yuji swapped, Yuji's not going to come back with access to the copy technique because he was in Yuta's body using it. Yuta wasn't in his body using it. And I know this is getting really confusing, but conceptually your idea, like theoretically, if Sukuna's finger had been in Kusakabe and he spent enough time with it, then yeah, he could have gotten the technique as well. But I just don't think that particular way with the soul swap would have resulted in it. And if he did have it, I don't think he would have, decided not to use it just to give the kids the spotlight. I think Kusakabe is the type to like not be messing around in that regard. If he could end the fight, I think he would end the fight. And Finally, from Zachariah, the worst parent of the year award, Kinjaku or Toji? And I gotta give it to Kenny because Toji at least had a couple of redeeming moments as far as Megami was concerned. But let me know y'all's thoughts, and thank you so much for watching.